Hey, this is George back with the New Hunter's Guide, and today I want to talk to you about how to find a place to hunt on public land. My public land journey was ridiculous. When I first started asking people where to find a place to hunt, the answers that I got were borderline terrible to misleading. I think some people even tried sabotaging me. One guy I remember said basically his directions were there's public land east. I was like, oh, east. Okay, right, that way. We'll just, drive until we find it. And it was a year before I found the land he was talking about, maybe another year or two before I figured out how to really understand where the borders were, what was there, how to make use of it. Just a painful experience. But public land is a huge resource. Many states have a lot of public land. My state, Pennsylvania, has a ton of public land. And it's something that, I think gets a bad rap. Yeah, it's true. There is a lot of hunting pressure in some areas of public land. However, there are ways to beat that hunting pressure. And usually that pressure is only during a select season or two of the year. Most of the time, that land is just going to be completely empty of hunters. And depending on how you hunt and what you want to hunt, you can have thousands of acres all to yourself. So jumping right into it. But before we do, why don't you go ahead and let me know in the comments below, what game do you plan to hunt on public land? What are you going after? Deer, turkey, squirrels, ducks, pheasants? What are you looking to hunt? Let me know in the comments below. So how do you find a good piece of public land to hunt on? Well, driving around is not a viable way to do it. I've never discovered any public land driving around. A lot of people talk about, well, you drive around and you look for the game, and I don't know where they might live that works, but I've never seen it happen. Maybe where you live that could work. That's how you find private land that you can try to get permission on to hunt there, and that's a different episode. So how do you find public land? Well, you can start with the Game Commission. Depending on your state and your game commission, you might have a map. When I first started, the PA State Game Commission, they had an old flat map. I mean, it was a printed map, but digital, and you could zoom into it. And, of course, those kind of maps, the farther you zoom, the blurrier it gets. And you could see just a couple splotches on my half of the state, and you're like, where is that? How big is that? What are the borders of that? And, I tried doing some stuff with that. I tried doing some driving around. I tried trying to figure out where some things were. And, man, it was like kicking a brick. It moved a little, but it hurt a lot. So then I went to Google Maps. Now, Google Maps has some places that are parks and recreational areas and things like that. And they've got the borders well defined. So that was sort of helpful. But a lot of the stuff on the Game Commission site wasn't on Google Maps, and some of the stuff that was on Google Maps wasn't on the Game Commission site. So I was like, this is, I'm like making this much progress. Then I discovered some of the hunting map apps, and I wish I would have discovered them at the beginning when I first started hunting. People ask, George, what map app do you use? I personally like to use OnX Hunt. OnX is not a sponsor. They're not a partner. They don't know I exist, but it's probably the best $30 a year that I spend. I can pull up that app. I can zoom in. It shows me every piece of public land in the country, every acre down to the foot, as well as every piece of private land and who owns it. But in terms of public land, there were things on OnX that weren't on the Game Commission's map. They weren't on Google Maps. They weren't on any other map that I could find. And I could zoom in, I could find out to the foot where I could go and what I could do. But even still, it wasn't always completely accurate. Sometimes there were things that were in question. So what I would do is I'd take a screenshot of my map and I'd forward it to the Game Commission and say, hey, tell me about this piece of land. This looks like it's public, but it seems like it's private when I get there. So we'd go back and forth, and they'd help me figure out where I could go, where I couldn't go, what was right, what wasn't right. And that was a game changer. That was absolutely a game changer when I started using map apps. Now, there's a lot of other good ones that are out there. HuntWise, HuntStand, several others that will do the job probably just as well. but that's the one I started with. And for the way I hunt and the way that I use the app and the way my phone works, that one's been the best for me so far. But once you discover where the public land is, the battle has just begun, right? Okay, now we know there's land here. Well, what do I do? How do I hunt that land? How do I find a place to hunt on that land? Well, if you're using, a map app, if you're using OnX, you can then go to Google Maps or Google Earth, and then you can get a 3D view of that piece of land, try to figure out where the hills are, where the valleys are, what's going on with elevation, where's the trees, where's the clearings. You can get a little bit more data that way, but you got to get boots on the ground. You got to get there. You got to find a place to park and a way to get onto that land and start looking around. Now, a lot of people, most hunters, the way that they find a place to hunt is they park, they walk into the woods 100 yards, they sit down or climb a tree, and then they hunt there. And that's just that. That's the way that it goes. And I've found that, that only works if nobody else has the same idea. So, for example, during firearms deer season in my state, most of the public land you can find within an easy walk of a parking area is going to be overrun with other hunters. We call it the Orange Army. And you need to be careful. And you need to make sure you're wearing lots of orange. And it is a difficult thing. But a lot of people are dissuaded. They're discouraged. They decide, oh, well, there's nowhere you can find a good place to hunt because it's overrun, and they give up. Don't let that fool you. A lot of people are in the convenient spots. Very few people walk further than the convenient spots. If you can cover ground, if you can go deeper into the woods, if you can get some elevation, if you can get off the beaten path, off the beaten trail, and you can push deeper in the public land, and this is one of the big advantages public land gives you over private land, it's usually much larger. Private land might be 40 acres, 100 acres, 200 acres, could be more, could be less, all depends on a great many factors. Public land can be thousands of acres, thousands. One place I like to hunt that's about 45 minutes from my house is roughly 4,000 or 5,000 acres that's continuous. The shape is a little odd. It's not like a convenient square, but the acres are there. You can walk all day if you want to and not backtrack. It's enormous. And that's not even one of the biggest places. It's not real convenient to get to without a four-wheel drive, but you can get there. So you've got a lot more space on public land. The other benefit to public land is it's free. It costs nothing. It is there, paid for by your hunting license, which is something a lot of people don't realize, that the Game Commission and conservation efforts and all those things are funded and a huge part to hunting licenses. There's other things, but whenever you buy a hunting license, you are helping manage public land. Another big thing about hunting land that's a huge benefit is you don't have to call anybody and ask anybody if you can go when you want to hunt. That's a huge thing for me. There's a couple places that I've been able to get permission to hunt over the years. But man, they want you to call and schedule and do things all in advance anytime you want to go out. And I'm like, I just want to, it's like a 30-acre place or whatever. I'm like, I just want to walk around and look for footprints. And I got to go through all this hassle every time. Nice people. But I remember the one time I was talking to them, this one family in particular, and that land was booked every single day of the deer season by different hunters. And I was like, every day of the season? That means someone's going to be out there every single day. That means I don't want to hunt there because it is going to be absolutely overrun with hunters. Probably not all people that are taking good care of the land either. So, that can be tough. And there's a lot of times where public land can be an advantage over private land. And in space, and the fact that it's free, and the fact that you don't have to ask anybody's permission to go there. Now, another thing that's worth mentioning, just as an aside here, is land leases. You pay to lease the hunting rights on a particular piece of land. That could be hundreds of dollars. It could be thousands of dollars a year. But you have sole access as the hunter, and you don't need permission to go there. And there can't be any other hunters there, or you then have the right to tell them to leave, and you could post it. So that's an option. I'm not recommending that for new hunters, but there's a lot of similarities there between public land and the things I like about public land, which is that freedom to just come and go as you please. But getting right back to public land. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about in terms of trying to find a spot once you get there. One, you have to have an idea of the type of game that you're going after. If you're going after deer, if you're going after turkey, if you're going after waterfowl, pheasants, woodchucks, crows, doves, whatever it might be, you need to understand how that game uses the land. And each one of those is its own episode. But what you need to do is push into that land and try to find a place where people aren't going to be in the season that you're hunting. But even more than that, what I like to look for is trying to find a movement corridor. I don't mean game movement, I mean me movement. I want to identify areas that I can move during a hunt. So if I'm going turkey hunting, for example, I might go out and decide, okay, I'm going to start in this area over here. But I've identified I can do all around this perimeter, and I've scouted that. And I know what the trails look like, and I know what kind of elevations there are, what kind of habitats around there, where places to hide are, places animals might hide, places I could hide. So if I don't have any success right away where I'm at, or there's no birds there, I know exactly where to move. I can cover ground. And I might try to identify a short loop and a long loop, depending on the day, right? If there's game in the area, I might want to move a little bit. But if there's completely quiet, I might want to try running and gunning and covering some ground. When it comes to deer hunting, same kind of thing. I want to identify a few spots based on different habitat, based on different wind, and based on, plan B, C, and D in case other hunters are there. So I want to find out, okay, this is a great spot to hunt if there's an east wind, great spot to hunt if there's a west wind, maybe there's a north wind spot over here, but then I want to have options, and that doesn't mean a tree stand for every spot. I've taken deer sitting on the ground, walking around on the ground. You don't need to have a tree stand at every location. You just need to know, where can I go? Where can I hide? There's a big oak tree there. Maybe I could lean against that one. Depending on the wind, maybe I could hunt different winds. There's some thick brush there. I could take a chair and just sit in the thick brush maybe. That could be something super easy. You can make that decision on the fly. But the big thing is to have options. Because when you get the public land in the morning to hunt, if somebody else is in your spot or too close to your spot for comfort, the last thing you want to do is set up there anyway. That's been my experience. One, game can see you too much. They can detect you too often. It's hard to hide a lot of the time. But then you've got other people around you that then the game might see you, might see them. The chances of spooking game increase exponentially. Safety is a little bit of the factor. I think it's just good to be further away from other people that are hunting. But I'm just talking about scaring game, spooking game, and putting too much pressure on the land. So you want to try to find multiple locations on public land where you can hunt. The other thing to look at when you're trying to find a good place to hunt on public land, whatever map app you're using, whatever style you're using, look for the places to hunt that look terrible. That's right. Look for places that look terrible. You look up, you're like, oh man, that is just a rocky hilltop. That's a terrible area. That's just a horrible valley over there. Why? Because those are places other hunters are less likely to be, especially if they're close to civilization, if they're close to town. The more hunting pressure there's likely to be around there. If you can find spots that other hunters don't want to go, there may not be any animals there today. But when all the hunters come in and they start pushing the animals from the easy to get to places, where those animals are going to go? They're going to go where the hunters aren't at. And if you can find a place like that maybe it's hard to get to, it's a terrible climb, it's rough terrain, it's a deep valley, it's whatever. You got to walk through a marsh. Maybe you need to get a kayak and cross some water, whatever it might be. If you can find places other hunters don't want to go, you can have an advantage other hunters don't have. And then you can be in a place that the animals are moving to, which can be very, very effective, especially the middle of the season. when you're scouting before the season happens, there might be no sign of game there. But by the middle of the season, that could be the secret hideout for the biggest bucks in the area. That could be where the turkeys are congregating. That could be where whatever animals are getting pushed to, wherever they're being pressured from areas that have more hunters. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. Please give me a thumbs up, even a thumbs down if you don't like this video. Either way, let me know what you think. Head to the website, newhuntersguide.com. Check out all the episodes that I've got on hunting all different kinds of game, everything from how to find land to how to hunt deer, turkeys, everything else. You can find the podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And make sure you look around. I got a lot more videos coming and lots of videos out already. So I appreciate you guys. God bless you. Till next time, go get 'em in the woods.